I was born and raised in Bombay. Mumbai in those days was Bombay. Around the time of independence, so I'm one of India's midnight children. My parents were essentially professionals. Father was initially a bank manager, then wandered into government service, and my mother was a school principal. One of 4 kids, went to some of the better known schools of Bombay, Xavier's High School, Xavier's College, and IIT Bombay. I got into developmental activism during my years at IIT. Actually, we had started some kind of a small group within IIT. You may recall that 1965-66 were very, very difficult years for India. And at that time, there was a book called Triage, written by the Paddock brothers, in which they had said words to the effect that there is no point in giving food aid to India because by the mid-70s people will be falling dead like flies on the streets of Indian cities. Now that was very dispiriting for young people. But rather than take it negatively, some of my friends and I thought, maybe we should do something so that we don't end up over there. And at the same time, there was a group of Indians in the US, which included Dr. G.D. Agarwal, one Dr. Professor Mehta, and D.N. Saraf. And they were inspired by all the protests, the free speech movement at Berkeley. And they thought that if these people want to improve the state of their country, why don't we do something about our own country, even though we are living abroad? And they started something called Front for Rapid Economic Advancement of India, FRIA. And then Professor Mehta, GD, and Dr. Saraf came back to India to start something along the lines of FRIA in this country. And that's when Professor Mehta came in touch with me at IIT, and when he saw our interests, we found that their objectives, our objectives matched, and we said, ठीक है, हम आपका पहला फ्रिया का चैप्टर इंडिया में हम खोल देते हैं IIT में. Thereafter, soon after graduation from IIT Bombay, I took off for the US, like a number of my class fellows. But in '68, when I decided to go abroad, the question arose, who's going to run FRIA? And I said to Professor Mehta that, look, the best person that IIT has ever produced is Dunu. And I can talk to him. And sure enough, Dunu readily agreed. But at the time of leaving India, I said to Dunu that let me finish my PhD, and after I'm done with my PhD, just give me a year's warning and I'll be back. Late 60s, I landed there around the time of the famous Democratic National Convention of 1968. Massive protests against the Vietnam War. In 1976, the government of India had planned, this was the emergency period, the government of India had planned to pass the 42nd constitutional amendment, which was going to curtail all civil liberties and human rights in this country. As a protest against that, some of us who had established Indians for Democracy as a response to fight against the emergency, we decided to stage a walk for human rights in India. And that walk was from Philadelphia, Liberty Bell, up to the United Nations. The idea came from Professor Mehta. And I did not know how to organize a walk. So I had friends in the War Resisters League based in Manhattan. I contacted them because they were organizing an intercontinental walk all the way from San Francisco to Washington for social justice and disarmament. So here's this west to east walk, and they were being joined by feeder walks from north and south. Joe was on a feeder walk from Boston to Washington. And Joe had been told she and her 4 or 5 friends were going from Princeton to Trenton in New Jersey. And they were told that there is a small group of Indians who are doing this walk for human rights. If you see them on the way, greet them, they are our friends. So just as we were entering close to a place near Princeton called Rider College, this car comes to a screeching halt. A young woman jumps out of it, throws her arms around my neck and gives me a big hug and a kiss. So that was how I met Joe. September 22nd, 1976. And then we went on our separate walks the next day. Did not stay in contact with each other, but I always took down names, addresses, telephone numbers of people in a diary so that I could mail them a newsletter that I was publishing, Indian Opinion. And a year later, I had an opportunity. I wrote to her and I said, the anniversary of our first meeting is coming up, so let's get together. And she said, sure, why don't you come to my home? She was living with her parents in Fall River, Massachusetts. After the walk, she had dropped out of college, and that's how we renewed contact, and a few months later we were married. I met Anil in England in 79. Shortly after we got married, we went to England. I was setting up a course on appropriate technology at Stevens Institute of Technology. And in preparation for that, I had gone to England to meet people at Schumacher's organization, ITDG. And Anil was also in London at that time. We didn't know each other, but I had read his articles, so I contacted him. We told him that, look, if you come to New York anytime, come stay with us, which he did a few months later. And we found that we had this great common interest in wanting to publish a magazine on science and development. So he came back and he started running a news feature service at the Center for Science and Environment. Anil had gone to the pesticides network, PAN नाम का एक pesticides network होता था. And he had gone to attend one of their annual meetings, and there some people from Malaysia had shown him a folder called the State of Malaysia's Environment Report. On his way back, he contacted me and he said, look, I have seen this report, and KP Kannan of Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad and I have been talking about it on the plane, and we think that we should come out with something in India, State of India's Environment Report. Would you be interested? Well, mentally I had never left India and spent about close to 12 and a half or 13 years in the US. returned in 1981. I'm coming to Bombay, can I meet you? So I said, "Theek hai, let's meet." We met, he talked about the idea of on June 5th we will publish a series of articles. We will talk to various newspapers, we will ask them to give us their Sunday supplement or whatever is the closest to June 5th, and we'll publish articles about India's environment. What do you think about it? So I said, let me give it a thought, sounds like an interesting idea. That very evening, Dunu was passing through Bombay. So that evening I talked to Dunu and Dunu said, क्या होगा उससे? एक दिन तुम लोग अखबार में छाप दोगे, लोग करेंगे पढ़कर और फिर भूल जाएंगे. So Joe and I discussed this very contrasting reaction. And then I said to Joe, I said, look, JP has often talked about watchdog committees. This can be a watchdog committee. If we can collect people from different parts of India who put together their experiences on environmental conservation and their knowledge of environmental problems, then that could become an annual event. So just like we have the economic survey that comes out every year, this could be a citizens survey. And she seconded that idea. She said it's a very good idea. I got in touch with Anil, and Anil said, yaar, idea अच्छा तो है, but it's very ambitious. Will we be able to pull it off? How will we finance it? This is now December, early December. And June is not very far away, and I'm proposing to publish it in the form of a book so that people don't forget about it then after reading it. I then traveled across from Delhi to Kerala and back. And about every alternate day it was sleeping in a bed and the other night in a bus or a train. I contacted a lot of people, generated about 600 subscriptions, and Oxfam came through with a offer to buy, I forget whether it was 100 or 200 copies. They gave us a check for 20,000. So that set the ball rolling. In this tour, I also got in touch with people who could write, one of whom was Kalpana Sharma, she had been the editor for Himmat. So it was Anil, Kalpana and I who put the first report together. I had never really thought of being permanent at CSE, and I had initially volunteered to stay there and get the first report published. But after the first report was published, I was planning to move out, and number of my friends said, look, if you move out, there won't be a second report. And Anil felt the same way. So I thought that since I've made a commitment that this report will come out regularly, I should at least see it through the second report. So I stayed on. Then Anil was having a lot of difficulty running CSE, and I offered in '84. He had come to see me. I was in the US at that time, and he said that he was having a lot of difficulty running CSE, and I said, okay, I'll come back and I will run CSE. You haven't been around the country. You've been sitting in Delhi and writing, and it'll be a good chance for you to travel and to write. So that's why I returned in '84 end, and '85 I became the director at CSE. But I was never, Joe and I were never happy in Delhi. We did not want to be in Delhi. '87, '88 was one of the worst droughts in India. And that's how PSI got started really. So we undertook a study of how do people cope when they don't know where their next meal is coming from? That was the question we asked ourselves. So it was a multi-state study. Dunu and I talked a lot about what could be done as an alternative, and I had this idea of People Science Institute in my head since '81. See, medical doctors, they can set up a hospital, they can set up a health service. If you are a lawyer, you can set up a legal aid organization. If you are a teacher, educationist, you set up a school. What do engineers do? What do scientists and engineers do? So I thought maybe we should have some place which is a center of excellence for science and technology, but which practices science and technology based on people's knowledge, their problems, and in response to their problems. So it should be a place where common people feel comfortable walking in through the door and wanting to talk to a scientist. So that was the basic idea of PSI. And after we'd had our fill at CSE, then I decided that it's high time I left. Joe was also getting very keen to move out of Delhi, and we chose Dehradun because Dunu was from here. That's where he gets his name from. So we chose Delhi, Dehradun. It's not too far from Delhi. I could go to Delhi regularly if needed, and otherwise be far away that you are left undisturbed to do your work. 88. Yeah. In 87 we started PSI in an informal manner. It took us about close to a year to get it registered. So we began our work on water, and for the first 1 year all we did was look at the history of water management in India. So going back to the Vedic, pre-Vedic times down to the present. And we produced a series of papers and articles on the water situation in India. And then the earthquake happened in 1991. People came to see us from the mountains. They'd heard about PSI from somewhere. So they came and said, "आपको भूकंप अवरोधक घर बनाना आता है?" I said, "नहीं, हम तो पानी वाले हैं." So they said, "हमें तो घर चाहिए." Fortunately, one of our directors on the board, one of our board members, he was a first-rate construction engineer. So he said, "Come on, I'll help you guys. I'll teach you how to build earthquake-safe houses." And he taught us. And that's our first practical intervention on the ground. So that was a very major intervention. Then we got a request. We had done a study on water management in Palamu district, then in Bihar, now in Jharkhand. They had seen the Pani Panchayat work in Maharashtra, and they had read our report on traditional ways of water management, which seemed to be far more effective in warding off drought impact. So they asked us, could we do something during the drought period? And we did that experiment on Pani Chetna Manch and Pani Panchayats in Palamu, which was quite a successful approach, where you create village level institutions, and this is in an area where people are not educated at all, and you guide them, enable them to execute a project worth a couple of lakh of rupees to build a small earthen dam to harvest rainwater, which can then be used for irrigation. That project, I think in 2 years, we built 140 odd dams at a cost much below the typical government cost. In the process, empowering people in 125 villages and creating these Pani Panchayats over there, who then became so confident that they could do their own developmental work, that even after that project ended, many of those Pani Panchayats survived for a while. And some of the young people that we had picked up in Palamu and trained, they are still active in Palamu. So that was our second big project. That took us into watershed management. And PSI is one of the leaders in watershed development, participatory watershed development. I think the first serious effort that I got involved in on the policy front was the watershed, participatory watershed development. You'll remember B.N. Yugandhar. Yugandhar had just become the Special Secretary for Rural Development, and he came on a tour to see what participatory work is going on. He visited us in Palamu. He was very impressed. So Yugandhar took up that issue and got PSI involved in watershed management, participatory watershed management. And we started a special program within CAPART for the voluntary organizations. And that's when we produced these guidelines for the voluntary sector. And thereafter, the idea of having a standing committee, especially for watershed development within CAPART, was highly appreciated by the Director General of CAPART at that time, Ranjit Singh Ji. And he said, why don't we do it for all the different major works that CAPART does? So pretty soon we had standing committees, and that got me interested, and I could see some positive change taking place. CAPART was quite notorious in those days, and pretty soon people began to realize that this was going to be a different CAPART. After watershed development, one of our successes was setting up this environmental quality monitoring lab, in which we began to produce these small water quality monitoring kits, which people can use on their own and check their water quality. Village information system is software for enabling people to download data about their own village. We had linked the census of 81, 91, now 2001 and 2011 in there. So if you want to see how your village has progressed or not progressed, you can click on your village and you can download 175 parameters. So that came, and then came the system of rice intensification. We were one of the early movers along with Pradhan. Pradhan also got in it fairly early. But we took a leap of imagination by saying that, there is no special method in SRI. What SRI is doing is applying principles of agroecology. So these principles should work for other crops. So we tried it in wheat. And I think PSI was the first organization in the world to report data on system of wheat intensification. Once that took off, then several Pradhan came up, tried it with vegetables like brinjals, tomatoes. I think both of us tried it with jowar, and we found that it could work. Right? So there's a whole bunch of, special achievements. And I think our most recent successful work has been spring shed development, in which we are helping communities revive dried up or drying springs. And I think by now PSI must have on its own enabled the revival of about close to 1,000 springs. We are part of a consortium led by Aquadam of Pune, and the consortium itself was expanded into the Spring Shed initiative all over the country. When I last spoke with Himanshu about this, Himanshu Kulkarni of Aquadam, he said that they must have helped revive more than 10,000 springs. Thereafter, I got involved a little bit in earthquake-safe housing policies and so on. But the major contribution came with SRI work, trying to get SRI adopted as a national policy. That didn't work very well, but several states took it up, and that was a very big lesson. That India being a federal system, that if something doesn't work at the national level, you work at the state level and see if you can push your ideas over there. If enough states take it up, the national government might be encouraged to take it up. Thereafter came this whole Ganga issue. It was not cleaning the Ganga is secondary. The issue is revival of the Ganga. Ganga was dying, and it is still dying. And G.D. Agarwal, who was at that time the chairman of PSI, decided that he was willing to stake his life for reviving the river. We were involved in a much smaller campaign in Uttarakhand called the Nadi Bachao Abhiyan. Something like 450 dams had been planned in this state on the various rivers, and Ganga, of course, was very prominent in that. So, from Nadi Bachao Abhiyan, I graduated to helping GD in his campaign to save the river. And you know that GD had done a series of fasts, the first one being in 2008, and that got me involved in different committees at the national level that the government of India had formed, the most well-known being the National River Ganga Basin Authority, which was headed by the Prime Minister. So it got me a little bit of prominence also, because I would speak out at these meetings, whether the government liked what I said or not. And finally I did quit that NGRBA in protest in 2013, because I found that nothing serious was happening. Bhagirathi Eco-Sensitive Zone, that was the biggest achievement of NGRBA. GD's argument was that this is the last stretch of a pristine stretch of the Ganga, and there are 3 dams planned in this stretch. Why shouldn't this stretch be saved? The government of India had the policy of eco-sensitive zones. We suggested that at the first meeting of NGRBA, developed it into a policy measure, and till today the only stretch of the Char Dham highways that is still in a pristine condition is that 100 kilometers from Uttarkashi to Gangotri. What comes in the way is the lack of people's commitment to ensure, to first understand the problem. I mean, the government says, yes, we are cleaning up the river, and everybody jumps on the clean the Ganga bandwagon. The real problem is there's no water in Ganga. And unless you have a flowing river, what are you talking about? But the government has successfully diverted the people's attention from the real problem to a secondary problem. And something like reviving the Ganga is not a small thing. What it requires is the kind of campaign that the farmers are doing over there in Delhi. Massive public campaign, massive public support for it. So that's the key lacuna. The second is the total lack of government will. गंगा में जो पानी बह रहा है इस समय वो यमुना का पानी है, और यमुना में जो पानी बह रहा है इस समय वो चंबल का पानी है. So, and as they keep building dams on all these other rivers, even they will dry up. The dams are built, the water is diverted for irrigation or other purposes, and then those rivers will also dry up. So, but I'm quite hopeful. Why I'm hopeful is that these are not things that happen in 5-year periods, political election periods. They happen in generational periods. So it will take a generation or two before people, really enough people, you reach a critical mass that the campaigns can take off. My message to the younger people is that if you are interested in saving the environment of this country, then first of all you have to realize that environment is not just about pretty trees and tigers in this country. It is much more than that. It is conserving the natural resource base on which the lives of hundreds of millions of rural people are intimately dependent. They get their food from their farms, they get their water from wells and tube wells, they get chara for their fodder for the animals from the nearby forests. So, whenever you chop down a forest near a village, you are depriving the chara for the animals and the fertilizer for the fields, and thereby impacting your own food production. So that's how the relationship should be understood. The second is to try and recall that period of May and June of 2020, when the massive engine of economic growth in this country slowed down, and suddenly the rivers became clean, the atmosphere became clean, and people as far as Jalandhar could see the Himalayan peaks of Dhauladhar range in Himachal Pradesh. Couple of 100 kilometers as the crow flies. So that's the kind of change that can be effected. We've all seen it now, if not directly, at least on our TV screens. So we know that change is possible. We just have to decide how we want to live our lives. और वहाँ फिर गांधी जी का वो कोट आ जाता है, that earth has got enough for everyone's, for meeting everyone's needs, but not enough for everyone's greed.